There's small and then there's really small. I grew up in really small town America, LaGrange, Indiana, a town with one stoplight in the middle of cornfields and Amish country. There, the worldly people were the ones who'd traveled outside of the tri-state area, not been to another nation. Myself? Well, the first time I set foot on an airplane, I was 20 years old. And yet I felt like I'd been so many places. I've been to Lake Placid and witnessed the Miracle on Ice, walked the grass courts of Wimbledon, and even gone to Augusta to see Jack Nicklaus pull one last rabbit out of his hat at the Masters. Oddly enough, I even felt a scant bit responsible for the end of the Cold War, just by watching the Olympics and seeing the shifting national affiliations. Through the touchdowns and the slam dunks, I learned so much about poverty and opportunity, hope and hopelessness, barriers created and barriers broken. So, what was the lesson of my youth? Sports wield power. They have the ability to transport, transcend, and more specifically, to teach. Decades later, as a sports media professor, I find myself regularly making that case. We need to teach sport. Not how to play them, I think we have that covered, but how to consume them, how to understand them, how to talk about them. Because when we teach sport, we end up teaching so many other issues as well. Race, gender, religion, sexual orientation, domestic violence, identity. 2/3 of Americans do not own a passport, but over 95% report consuming some form of international sports media. Our world gets wider when sports enter the equation. So what kind of conversations can we have through the lens of sport? Well, let's consider for a moment issues of race. For instance, an initial glance at a swimming competition could lead someone to falsely believe that blacks simply can't swim as well as others. However, there is so much more to that story. In the American South, part of that story involves generations of Black Americans being denied access at lakes, pools, or beaches. Mom and Dad can't go to the pool. They don't learn to swim. They don't encourage their children to swim because they don't feel they can teach them or save them. Generations go by, the cycle continues. See, race can correlate with history. It can also correlate with geography, and sometimes those barriers can be daunting. This is Eric Musambani, Olympic swimmer from Equatorial Guinea. He finished his 100-meter freestyle swimming competition 1 minute slower than any other competitor. Was he a laughingstock? Hardly. See, Musambani was the first swimmer ever to compete for his nation. He trained in a hotel swimming pool, the only pool available to him in his entire country. Musambani finished 1 minute slower than everyone else and was a hero just by jumping in the pool. Or let's transition to issues of gender. 77 cents on the dollar is terrible from a wage standpoint, but it's a far higher proportion than what most women athletes receive from national sports media. In 2014, sports news programs such as ESPN SportsCenter devoted just 1% of its coverage to women's sports. Contrast that with an entity such as the Summer Olympic telecast. In 2012, NBC devoted 55% of its primetime London Olympic telecast to women athletes. Teaching sport helps us to explore that cavernous gap, because this athlete can't seem to get anyone's attention. But take that same athlete, wrap her in the American flag, and suddenly the whole nation watches. And then, of course, there are the images. Study after study shows that women athletes are more likely to be shown in non-athletic, passive poses. And yet I have to ask, is this progress? She's in athletic attire. She's performing her sport, although I'm pretty sure Lindsey Vonn doesn't normally turn to the side and smile for the camera. But I think most would agree this is a sexualized image. Historically, Sports Illustrated has devoted just one cover per year to a female athlete. So I suppose it could be seen as progress that one woman received not one, but two covers in the year 2013. Except for the fact that that woman was non-athlete supermodel Kate Upton, who graced the cover of the swimsuit issue and then a few months later posed with baseball players Justin and BJ Upton because, well, just because. So sport can be used to advance issues of identity, ranging from race to gender to far beyond. But we can learn more than that. Consider what can be gleaned about public deliberation through the debates we're currently having surrounding Native American mascots. Yes, this is an opportunity to teach origin stories, including Native American history and the evolution of language over time. However, it's also a chance to pose pertinent questions about the way 21st century America deliberates. First, does everyone get equal voice in this debate? Do I, as a Caucasian, get the same vote as a Native American living on a reservation? Second, can the acceptability or offensiveness of anything be determined via a national poll? If 51% of a population decides something okay, does that settle it? I don't think it's that easy. Most would not tell a joke at a wedding reception because only 30% will find it offensive, particularly if one were the bride. Finally, there's that critical distinction to be made between should change and should have to change. The former is a statement of value, the latter a statement of policy. As such, the ramifications for both are quite different. There is simply so much that we can learn about society beyond Native American mascots, beyond race, beyond gender. ESPN executive chairman George Bodenheimer once recalled his travels in the 1980s, going from town to town, trying to sell the fledgling network to local cable companies. Each town he went to, he said he always heard the same thing. Well, Mr. Bodenheimer, you came to the right place because this here is a sports town. I think it's time for us all to accept that we came to the right place for these conversations because this is a sports nation. What is more important than sport? I'm sure most of you are thinking tons of things are. You'll say your job is more important. But is it when a reported $1.9 billion is lost annually due to interest in college basketball's March Madness in lost worker productivity? You'll say religion is more important. But is it? When one of the top reasons why a regular church-going family fails to attend Sunday services is sport event attendance, whether that's youth sports or the desire to see your favorite college or pro team play. You'll say your health is more important. Yet a recent study found that 59% of all Americans would trade a month off of their lifespan in exchange for a championship for their favorite team. You'll say issues of life and death are certainly more important. Yet even at funerals, there has been a noticeable spike in sports-themed caskets decked out with logos of your favorite team. All of these things should be more important than sport. But there's a big distinction to be made between what should be and what is. Sports can sometimes take on an inexplicable level of importance. I know because it happened to me. See, when I was 21 years old, my father passed away early in the morning after a very brief illness. I spent that day in shock. But that evening, I sat down and I watched my Green Bay Packers win a playoff game. At halftime, I ate for the first time all day. And I know, sports should not have mattered on a day like that day. but they did. Stories like mine are amazingly common. This stuff matters. Sports often can transcend virtually any boundary, real or imagined. Remember those swimming examples? Well, this is Jamaica's Aaliyah Atkinson. More specifically, this is Jamaica's Aaliyah Atkinson after becoming the first black swimmer to win a world title in the pool. We have to teach the barriers within sports so we'll recognize when someone comes in and knocks those barriers down. So how do we teach sport for social change? Well, I'll tell you where we don't do it. Physical education. This isn't PE, it's just E, education. As such, school curricula should include Jesse Owens when discussing Hitler in the 1936 Berlin Olympics. Discussions of the feminist movement should still have a healthy dose of Susan B. Anthony, but at least a mention of Babe Dietrichson-Zaharias and her amazing sports accomplishments, including playing on the men's PGA Tour over 6 decades before Annika Sorenstam and Michelle Wie made it more contemporary. Local groups should sponsor talks about a wide range of issues, from increased injuries in certain sports to the escalating practice of youth redshirting, where children are held back from kindergarten not because they aren't academically or socially ready to do so, but because that extra year will really help them dominate youth sports. Yet more specifically and more directly, when you see someone trying to use sport to teach social change, don't roll your eyes. Don't see it as an attempt to make sport trump all other forms of academic or intellectual pursuit. See it as smart, contemporary, because that's what it is. Bottom line, folks, if we don't use sport to start these conversations, most of these conversations will not happen at all. Legendary basketball coach John Wooden once said that sports don't build character, they reveal it. Dig deeper, they'll reveal far more than that. Thank you.